AR goggles. And I thought, how am I going to protect him from this? I mean, it's one thing to take this out of his hand. Realistically, he's going to have one. But realistically as well, he's going to be wearing a headset at some moment in time. It's just a matter of how quickly will it come. Is it a hype? Sure, it's hype just like everything at the beginning. And sure, a ton of these metaverses are going to crash, just like we saw in the ICO phases and many tech booms and busts before that. That's just a reality, right? But is it here to stay? Yes. Same as the internet, same as crypto, same as all of these inventions. The reality is it's here to stay. It's just a matter of, how quickly it will come and what we do to protect ourselves and the people around us and our society as well.
Melanie, we were just speaking about this. The hype or what everyone's creating, like around NFTs and games, that's what the focus is on. It's around entertainment, but there are other aspects to this that need to be discovered, like what Saqr was saying. So at your event as well, there was like you'd brought in fashion, you'd brought in education. Any more? Would you elaborate on that?
We also brought in influencers and lifestyle influencers with millions of reach. And I think this is the next way to go, to bring in content creators with that know amazing storytelling and know how to message it to their followers and to more people. So content creation is very important, and to do it in a way that educates more people in an entertaining and fun way, because else no one really, this going to school, this sitting down and having to learn what is now blockchain, what are NFTs. Ideally, you shouldn't even think about it. You should just use technology and enjoy using it.
All right. Ralf, because of the number of organizations that CryptoOasis has onboarded in the past, I would say in the past 6 months, there have been several of them that have, that have been related to the metaverse, including metaverses, including objects for the metaverse. How do you see it transforming the system? Like, how do you see, businesses transforming because of the metaverse?
I think we're talking two different things. First of all, we need to regulate this at the end of the day. We don't need to, but it will be regulated. But regulation follows 5 years after technology, so we got a little bit of time until the regulator will jump into that. I think regulators are still trying to regulate centralized exchanges at the moment. So welcome to Binance in the UAE, by the way. The other thing is why we are working with a lot of different organizations. I hope that decentralized metaverses will rule at the end of the day, that we will not have the big metaverses like a Google or metaverse controlling everything. When we are honest and we look at the tech world today, we are all talking about blockchain and all that stuff, but beside a little bit of a financial system, we didn't create anything till now. So there are not really use cases live outside of the financial system. We are proud about the market cap of Bitcoin and some other tokens, but really added some value with blockchain technology till today, I'm sorry not. And I believe when we now look into that metaverse opportunity and we lose again the power to the, I always say, to the GAFA companies. It's not GAFA anymore, it's Gamma now, I think so. But when we lose the power over there, we will lose that game at the end of the day. Because I said it already on our last panel, if you are getting excluded off a metaverse, off a platform, so being unplatformed, that's a really strong thing. Out of a country, I can get unplatformed by the UAE out of the UAE. If they don't like me anymore, that's fast. In Switzerland, it's quite difficult to onboard someone, so it takes a little bit more time than in Dubai, probably. And I think in Russia, we have seen that being unplatformed in Russia, that's a very fast process. So in the metaverse, or in the metaverses, it's the question, who is gonna unplatform whom? And I would like to take the same example. You know, this former president in the US with his Twitter account. His life was about his Twitter account at the end of the day, and he got unplatformed from Twitter. So one of the most powerful people in the world got unplatformed from social media. Now think about what would happen if your life is 90% in the Metaverse and you get unplatformed by a centralized organization. So they cut you out of your personal life. And I think there are challenges we are even not thinking about at the moment, or probably thinking about through 5% or something like that. And I'm curious to learn, I'm curious to bring our points in of our ecosystem, and I hope that we, with decentralization, self-sovereign identity, and similar stuff we invented or this in the last 15 years, that we can have some useful power in these organizations.
Nice. Alexia, that leads into one of the points here that you'd made earlier, that it may pave the way for the decentralization of corporate and individual identity.
Yeah, I think I kind of want to say something, in addition to what Ralf said, because the reality of deplatforming, which kind of speaks to the, decentralization of identity as well, and how important that is and how we're going in that direction, is that, I work primarily with governments and regulators. That's most of the work that I do. We have 13 blockchain companies operating only in the regulatory technology space. So that's all we do. And I've got to say, being able to engage with these entities at this stage and explaining to them how it is important to look at decentralized metaverses as well, and decentralized platforms as a means for their engagement, is really critical. Like you said, regulators are always 5 years after the technology. And that's because realistically, either they're not being engaged or it just takes them ages to really get, what it is that we're doing. But, you just had an ambassador who is just seated here, who just left, who was the very first in the world to launch a Metaverse embassy, right? And so you have the nation state of Barbados saying, well, we could develop a centralized metaverse. We could be based in Meta, but instead we're going to launch in a decentralized space. That's incredibly important, because that speaks a lot about, or may speak and may help, this idea of deplatforming. Now, you can't just have a government or a corporation that can just deplatform you, because it's in a decentralized operating environment. Realistically, most governments and corporations are not going to, walk the route of the decentralized metaverse space, but hopefully they will. There's always that hope that could happen. And now, as I'm engaging, various governments, right now working on a pretty exciting project called the Metaverse Special Economic Zone, working with several governments across the world and seeing whether there is an opportunity to endorse a zone that creates collaboration in these future metaverse spaces. I'm starting to see that, governments are listening. They're not laughing us out of the room the same way they were 10 years ago in the central bank digital currency space for one of our other projects. So, as for me, that speaks volumes to where we're going, and hopefully we'll see a space where it's not entirely centralized.
You want to answer this?
Well, I think there's a wider transformation that both speakers touched upon, which is very important as a key takeaway. Yes, there is a little bit of a hype, no doubt here, but the matter of the fact is that this transformation is coming. There's a reason why we see household names like Nike and Adidas and Chanel and Snoop Dogg be in the metaverse, right? It's not because there isn't a use case for it, but because they've actually realized that there's a use case that they can tap into. Snoop Dogg suddenly is a metaverse asset owner, right? Selling out assets left, right, and center. Nike today has a collection that you can buy into. Adidas has a collection of NFTs that you can own, right? With that, and with the transformation of the marketplace, and with the transformation of opportunities, comes a large opportunity for businesses that are out there, right? I've heard someone say that anyone that doesn't have a metaverse strategy in place, any brand that doesn't have a metaverse strategy in place 2 years from now will be obsolete in the metaverse. Would I paint the picture this dire? No. You know why? Because I see us in the top of the hype cycle. So Gartner rates emerging technologies on a hype cycle, right? And the first leg of that hype is the height of inflated expectations. I think that's where we are right now. We're at the height of inflated expectations. And by the way, not just I think, Gartner has actually put metaverses at the height of inflated expectation. You know what comes after the hype of inflated expectation? The thorough of disillusion, where we suddenly think it's not useful for anything. I love the fact that we had His Excellency Gabriel Abed already go out there in the metaverse. He went out and he said, you know what, I will tap into the opportunity, I will define this for my country, and I will be one of the first countries to open an embassy in the metaverse. Now, if that's not powerful, I don't know what is. Alexia just mentioned, we're talking about special economic zones. Special economic zones of different states coming together, creating a platform for their citizens and people that want to interact with their country to interact there. Yes, there is opportunity, and there is a large opportunity, and I do believe that any brand should be considering, at least thinking about the fact, how do I take myself into the metaverse? And it's great to see people like Chiro here in the room with his Meta Terrace, right? Here's a restaurant that is actually out there already saying, we are in the metaverse, come visit us in the metaverse, and you know what? Come visit us in the real world as well.
So you've spoken about, that's the corporate angle on how they're moving and their strategy is into the metaverse. Something, Melanie, you'd picked up on is the non-crypto natives, like the non-blockchain natives, which, till a month ago was me as well, right? How do you draw us into this? Because as much as we've built a museum in the metaverse that you can visit, how are you going to get the non-natives on this platform, on all of these platforms, the 4,000 that are out there already?
Yeah, we already gained some experience with non-crypto natives in our products, because we have built with one protocol a second layer protocol that can plug into any social network, in any Web 2 product, in any e-commerce platform. And therefore we had to deal already in our testing phases with non-crypto native people. And just making them feel comfortable with a wallet. What can they do if they are earning some crypto, some tokens inside these apps? Can they shift it out to a crypto exchange, or do they want to exchange it against gift cards? So we have given them various options and tried to make them really not feeling any difference between a Web 2 app and a dApp. And I think this is one part of bringing it to adoption. We need to figure out the best UI, UX for just for onboarding non-crypto native people, giving a little bridge. But at the end, obviously, you need to touch crypto, you need to touch tokens in a lot of the Web3 products. And therefore, education is key, creating experiences where people can learn more in a fun and entertaining way. So we are trying to do these conferences exactly also to help more people to understand the advantages of Web3.
Nice. So education, since you brought that,
And UI UX. I mean, it's at the end simple UI UX, to make it easy for everyone to join in.
Right. Now, on the education of this, or education in the metaverse. So you picked up on this conversation before of how is it being done, what's missing, and what can we expect to come out of it?
I think education in the entire emerging technology space, not just in blockchain or Meta or wherever, education has transformed. I had to travel from Germany to the UK to go to a great institution so I get some good education. Right now, anyone that's interested in education goes online, goes on edX, goes on Harvard, goes on YouTube, where Princeton and the likes are putting out their education for free and can consume that education. So the education landscape has changed, but we need to actually start consuming that education material, right? We need to start educating ourselves because, and I know it's International Women's Day today, so a big shout out to our fellow panelists, leaders in the space, and a big round of applause for them actually. And I want to tie that to education because we need to educate ourselves and not make the mistakes that we made in the past. In the past, we developed technologies, we developed these great technologies, like AI, for example, and we forgot about the minorities. Obviously, we don't just mean the minorities, that is the female, because calling the females a minority, that's the wrongest notion in the world, right? They're 50% of the population. Every one of us is dealing with that in one way or the other. But we're forgetting about these minorities when we're developing these technologies. We need to pull these minorities in very early on. And I mean all kind of minorities, right? There will be some element of us having to forget about one minority or another minority, but we need to start, we've already seen AI go full circle. Artificial intelligence is now at this point where its applications are widely available for anyone to use and to consume. Every one of us is an AI user.
I love to disagree.
On AI?
Yeah, on AI.
No.
I fully believe that we are not there yet.
With AI?
With AI. This is just the start, what we are seeing. And when you look at the hype circle, we are nowhere. I mean, on the short term, we are always underestimating the impact of technology.
Yeah.
Even on the hype circle, we are underestimating it. And on the long term, overestimating. So on the long term, we are underestimating it. And I'm a little bit afraid because I'm not watching very often movies. But one of my favorite movies was Matrix #1. Matrix, the original one, I think this is in the 90s.
One of the best movies ever.
You haven't been born at this time. So this movie, when you look at it, and you look at it with the perspective of a metaverse today, and you look at the people there sitting in their cocoons and being used by a big system, probably being used for the purchase power. This is how a metaverse could look like, and I don't want that a metaverse looks like
exactly.
that. So I believe there's a big danger behind everything what we are seeing right now, and we need to transform this in a thing which is useful for us, where we can be in Barbados to talk about getting a passport there because I want to give away my passport, and not only for having fun and being consumed by this.
See, but that's the point. On AI, although it hasn't, it isn't there.
You tell me all the time AI is already there. I mean, AI even can't recognize if there is a bridge on these 9 pictures when I have to make sure that I'm not a robot. I mean, so AI can't do anything today.
Well,
I mean, if this is the
business
test, are you a robot or not? Because we are better than an AI,
It's because you're worse than an AI. So you pick the wrong ones. They know you're a human.
I mean, AI is really not there. It's a super hype.
There we go. But see, if we don't take these learnings into the metaverse and blockchain right now, then we're going to end up where we are 15 years later with AI. Right? So that's the point. Educate ourselves. We need to educate ourselves. Everyone in this room is already doing a great job on it. You're sitting here, you're educating yourself. Take that message out to people. Tell them AI is overhyped. Yeah? and educate yourself, I think.
And if you don't, you'll be in one of those boxes for the next conference. We'll just be plugging in from the back of your heads.
I think now for adoption, what is also interesting, I guess a lot of crypto natives here in the room, and I hope that everyone is already having a good bag of Bitcoin and Ethereum. However, we were surprised, even crypto natives, of the rise of Doge. and the rise of Shiba Inu. And I think these meme coins have done more for adoption than anything else before. So NFTs were the next rise for adoption that made it so easy for digital artists and for more people to get involved in crypto that hadn't touched crypto before. But meme coins are also something I don't know, in my opinion, totally undervalued and underrated for the adoption of the whole space. And a lot of Bitcoin maxis missed out on all these Shiba Inus and Inu opportunities out there.
Please, Melanie, don't go there, please. Please don't go at meme coins.
I think
The question is, what is a shit coin at the end? You know, if it finds adoption, if people find it valuable and are ready to exchange it for other things and services, then you know it's transforming into something valuable.
Like a Tesla, for example.
I mean, in the early days, we said mussels would be valuable and exchanged mussels, right? I mean, it's always it takes time, for adoption.
I think that's absolutely true. I come at this from a little bit of a different angle because it's primarily government focused. So, earlier in June 2021, we finished up a business plan for the first national digital bank underpinned by stablecoins. It's sitting right now in a parliament of a nation, right? And so you have that nation looking at basically banking its citizens. It as a government has not necessarily been de-risked as many other governments have, but rather have been left out of the financial system and was not able to bank the industries like blockchain and fintech and cannabis that they wanted to bank because the bank said no. So they decided to develop their own bank. Why does that matter? Because suddenly you have adoption in a different way. You have your government, which people typically trust, not all governments, but a lot of people trust their governments, that's issuing you a national bank account, which is an e-wallet. And so ultimately you're learning through your government, you trust them, so you trust what you have, and ultimately that's your gateway to, the broader ecosystem, which I think is really important. Another one, obviously as I was mentioning, the Metaverse Special Economic Zone is another place, that caters to decentralized autonomous organizations and Metaverse businesses. Fine, those are already in the ecosystem. But digital nomads is one of the groups that this Special Economic Zone caters to. And the reason is because digital nomads are at home everywhere, but they're at home nowhere. So what does a business license look like for them, right? Where do they pay taxes? How do we, how do we govern? How do they engage in disputes resolution when they're all over the place, right? And why does that matter? Because again, digital nomads, not all of them, are already within our ecosystem. So when you have governments endorsing a special economic zone, legitimizing it, people coming, getting their business license, that's your gateway. Now your corporate license, which is in your wallet, also houses potentially your NFTs, your digital identity at one point in time, your land titles, and all the rest of it, right? That's the gateway.
I would like to test something, and I would see if you are active. Please, nationals from the United Arab Emirates are taken out of that question. Who is trusting his government? May I see your hand? Who is trusting his government? That's not a lot. That's not a lot. So,
yeah, but you're appealing to it. I mean, is everyone in crypto here? Are you all into decentralized? Are you all They're all decentralization advocates. So they don't trust their governments. But the vast majority of people do.
And then,
you're from Switzerland like me. How many Swiss people don't trust their government?
There's a Swiss table. And only 2 had the hand up.
Us. But we're not the average person, Ralf.
All right. I'm going to round this back.
What I wanted to take as well, and you talked about CBDCs. And we will talk about payment options in the Metaverse. And the thing with CBDCs is it controls your money flow, totally. So someone else will decide if you spend your money on nice shoes, on alcohol, on a nice bottle of wine, or just on food or whatever. So CBDCs give you full control when you're a government. And I mean, when you're in China, you see already what's going to happen. I believe
it already happened.
Yeah, it's happening already. I believe the Swiss government is in a good way to work on that in general. But I'm really careful about this full digitalization and full control from someone. And I know you are...
I agree with you completely. What I said, Ralf, is that it's the gateway. I believe that once you're in, people will realize that the system they're operating in isn't that good. And in 2012, when I was working at the UN, I remember a diplomat came to me and told me, we were coming out of the UN Security Council meeting, and he told me, the nation state is dead. I was like, what? You know, it's this idealistic young girl. I believed in all of that. And he's like, no, it's dead. Well, the reality is maybe things will transform and people will see that, it doesn't work out so well.
You know, the problem is we talk about data privacy. We talk about own your own data, own your own keys and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's about how comfortable is it to use a technology. I mean, who in the room is not using single sign-on from some systems because it's just comfortable? Yeah, you do, but you do not. Yeah, but the problem is we're talking about it, but only a few percentage of the world is talking about it, and 99% is just the user. And when you're just the user, at the end of the day, we come back to the matrix. You are locked into the system, and that's not a nice future when we look into that.
Well,
and the question is, how can we educate and get people activated that there's an issue coming up? And all the speeches, all the talks till now, nothing really helped. That's my opinion.
So speaking about the future, you'd mentioned this before when you were making a point, overestimating, underestimating. Like, I'd like to get all of your points on the Metaverse. Are we overestimating it right now with everyone jumping on board and every other person creating a new Metaverse? Or are we underestimating it? There's a huge way to go.
Should you?
Starting with you? Yeah.
I couldn't hear it properly from there.
Yeah, I'm having trouble with that too. So, are we underestimating the Metaverse or are we overestimating it with the number of players moving into the space as quick as they are?
I think it's now too early to say under or overestimating, because it's just the technology isn't there yet. I mean, we were also now for our event discussing with some metaverses to stream our event into their metaverse, but video streaming wasn't available yet. It's just this is the current state also of the technology. It needs improvement. I think by the end of the year we will already see the first real launches, real use cases, more events, more gatherings, etc. in these metaverses. It just, I think we're here still a little bit too early to say we're underestimating or overestimating. But we can see, like Ralf said, Facebook's transformation of, such a big, important brand into Meta, that was the wake-up call for many bigger or other big brands out there saying, oh, something very important seems to go on here. And we should be prepared for this. We had also at our conference a very interesting company called The Gang, and they are already building for so many brands all these 3D environments in metaverses, also in big games or gaming platforms like Roblox, and it's growing so fast. It's fascinating, but for consumers at the end to adopt it, it will take some time, and that's why probably the gaming segment is the fastest growing, because these are young people, young kids, who are understanding this maybe faster, can adopt it faster than other generations.
I think one of the reasons for that is that games already have a lot of assets developed that can directly be transformed. Ralf, on the over or underestimating it?
I believe we are underestimating at the moment what the final impact will be. But I believe also it takes another 10 to 15 years to get there. But when I look into how fast the last 10 years have been, that's very close in the future for us. And as long as we underestimate it, we should try to be actively shaping it and make it a good future for everyone and not a dangerous one.
Nice. Alexia?
Maybe we're just estimating it at this point. I You know, it depends.
True diplomat.
It depends which
well
crowds.
said.
Depends which crowds you're in, right? You spend time with, you know, the average person, and they think you're crazy, and this stuff, it's never going to happen. For them, they're underestimating it. Like, they're really not realizing where we're going. And then I speak with, you know, the meta crowds, and they're just like obsessed with it. And I say, do you jump in there? It's like all pixels. I mean, it's great at times, but like, you know, it doesn't have the capabilities yet. You know, and in that context, I believe certain instances we're overestimating it. But the long-term impact, maybe to what Ralf said, is underestimating long-term.
So, I've been around technology cycles a couple of times, right? So I've seen the mobile. If you ask Ralf, I'm 12 and a half, so I'm just born. But I've seen a couple of technologies come and, you know, come to the hype where we've seen them today. What I have to say for the first time, and the most recent one, let's say, would be my involvement in blockchain, where I actually went out and tried to get governments and organizations to join this. And, you know, a couple of years later, we're still not in a blockchain world, right? So how successful was that? With Metaverse, and although I hate to say it, but a big shout out to Facebook for actually driving it, for the first time in every single cycle of this technology adoption, right? And I compare this with the internet or in e-commerce, I compare this with mobile penetration and adoption, I compare this with emerging technologies such as AI, drones, and others. For the first time, I'm seeing large corporations jump in the right time. Right now, if we think about it, every single fashion brand out there has something on the metaverse. The majority of household entertainment companies, Warner Brothers and the likes, have projects in the metaverse. Banks, JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon that said, oh, it's Bitcoin is bullshit, and I don't know what. JP Morgan is opening bank tellers in the metaverse. So for the first time, I feel that we are taking the right steps towards it. We're seeing institutional adoption very early on. They've adopted that, you know, we're not in this old school way of thinking anymore. We have to try it out, even if we don't know what it is. But on long term, I would definitely agree. I think we're still very early in that curve of adoption, and I think, if anything, underestimating it.
Okay, but so institutional adoption coming in this early would, like what Ralf said, you know, you're looking at another 5 years for regulators to come into this space.
I don't know if it's 5 years or 10 years. I used to be on stage in 2015 and say in 5 years everything will be blockchain. It's 2022, we're still not even there yet. I don't know what the timeline is going to be. What I know is the impact this can have on society. What I know is how this will change the foundation of our experience with brands. And that in itself is huge. Now, will the regulators be on top of this immediately? 100% no. But at least we're seeing institutions. We were all there in the early blockchain days. Governments, institutions, and the likes, if anything, would say, oh, you know, we don't want to dabble in it yet. Today with Metaverse, I'm seeing everyone jumping on the Metaverse train. Obviously, that then means it's a little bit hyped, but at least we're adopting technology.
But I'm just questioning, where were the regulators, you know, on the rise of Facebook and on the rise of Google, and on everyone distracting data from all of us. And I'm still wondering now how many years it took, and then we had now GDPR, but at the end it's still not safe. Yeah, our data isn't safe. It's not really back in our hands, and people are doing things with our data every day, big corporations. And so why are we crying or saying regulators need to come into this very early stage when they are not yet into Facebook and Google? And
you know, I have a very simple question, or a very simple answer on that question. You know, regulators are coming in when it's about money. So when Bitcoin got created, it was directly about money. What we always say is data is the new money, is the new value. So data should be regulated as well, and probably more than money, or at least at the same level. But we're not there yet on the regulator level, that the regulator sees what you can do with data. On the other side, we know what happened with elections in the US because of data with data privacy in general, and how you can move today the crowd with owning data and owning that. And we need the regulator coming in, but it's not so obvious like the money. The money is that what Credit Suisse and UBS did and taking gray money, black money, whatever you say it. But in the data, it's not so clear.
Well, because there are also backdoors to all the apps. I mean, they know how to utilize the data, and therefore regulation isn't needed, right?
Yeah, it is needed, because when private companies of the size of Google or Facebook are there where they are today, then we need regulation.
We as the consumers need regulation. In that case, we should be protected, but I'm just saying that the governments or the regulators have no need to regulate it because they have access to it.
Amazing.
They have also access to normal money, by the way.
All right, well, those are all the questions from my side. Shall we take questions from the crowd?
Catch. I hope that this is the most upbeat panel of the day.
We hope so.
Here we are all negative, telling you all the negative sides.
If you don't mind, just keep the answer short, okay? Because we're a little behind the schedule. Yeah.
You know, it's just boring if we agree on everything and we say, it's cool, the Metaverse will be super.
Hi, I'm Niels. I was in Second Life, when was this was my company, 2005. We spent loads of money. Was a big failure. The only happy ones were the marketing agencies who actually made loads of money on our shoulders. And before coming here, when Metaverse rise, I told myself, that looks very familiar to me. So I wanted to know how many devices the glasses were sold. I couldn't find any numbers. The only number I could find is Qualcomm, who was doing the chip. They said we shipped X millions, but that shipping doesn't mean selling. So when I see the very little number of glasses sold and this big hype, I see there a big gap that sounds familiar for me with Second Life in 2005. So how much is this really hype, and how much this virtual reality is economic reality?
Who wants to take this? Because I just bought 8 yesterday, and
We have 10 devices sitting in the office. We just raised the bar.
There's also the reality that you don't need to access these worlds via goggles. I mean, you can just jump into Decentraland with your computer. It's not as immersive, but you can do that. But to your point, I mean, that's still a very good point.
But you can also ask this question in general for all the dApps. I mean, we have on, you know, the dApps that have the most traffic, even there, just a few thousand daily active users. So it's a tiny fraction of, you know, a Facebook, Instagram, or what else. I mean, it's overall, I would say, a very new space that needs to find its marathon path to adoption.
Nice. Any other questions? No, this is, okay. Well, super. Thank you. Well, there's one.
Yeah, hi. I'm myself Siddha from India.
Hi.
Yeah, so I have been as a business developer or, in education space. As you were telling me that, you know, like education space has a lot of scope and we need to educate. So I've been doing, you know, like I've been a business developer for the last 11 years for all the top universities in India. So I was, you know, working on an idea where the engineering syllabus can be converted into AR and VR. So that they can wear the headsets, the students can have their own headsets, and the textbooks are converted into, you know, the equipments or the machineries is converted into AR and VR by 3D rendering it and things like that, so that they can use it multiple times, and there is no limit in the usage as well. Because like during the graduation day when I was studying as well, like we had very limited number of practical hours in the labs where we can use those equipments of the whichever the university owns. So I was just, brainstorming, like, why can't we create, rather than the universities need not, spend on the equipments.
What I can tell you is it's already happening.
Yeah,
So
in
we've
US,
recently looked into a company. They are deploying solutions in places where you can't get these machinery there, for example in rural India or Palestine or places that have embargoes against them, right? And they are able to create chemical labs, right, with chemical items or digital chemical items, right, in the metaverse. We've seen companies starting to partner with Google and Meta and the likes, small startups, because they can provide these immersive experiences that will actually on long term also save money because you don't need the material itself. You can have a digital representation. Think of it of a chemical kit will cost a couple of $100 per student. Now you can do this in the metaverse. What I can tell you, it's already happening and companies are deploying solutions in that space.
Well, thank you so much. And you know what, like a round of applause, because this was one of the best ones I've had so far.
Thank you.